The crimson dawn broke over Cathara Prime for what might be the last time. Ambassador Tavel pressed his webbed hands against the transparent aluminum of the observation deck, watching in horror as another section of the great coral city went dark. The massive reef structures that had housed his people for 10,000 years were dying, their brilliant blues and greens fading to lifeless black. Below him, millions of Catharans swam through their dying city in panic. Children pressed close to their parents as toxic bubbles rose from the ocean floor. The water itself had turned a sickly yellow-green, and breathing it burned their gills. Emergency broadcasts echoed through the underwater caverns, but there was nowhere left to run. "The radiation readings are getting worse, Ambassador," reported Chief Scientist Velnara, her normally elegant fins now trembling with fear. "Our sun's core instability is accelerating. The gamma bursts are breaking down the water molecules themselves." Tavel's heart sank. Their star, once a gentle provider of warmth and light, had become their executioner. Ancient Catharan legends spoke of the end times, when the great light would turn angry and consume the seas. He had always thought them mere stories told to frighten younglings. Through the dome, he could see the evacuation ships struggling to lift off from the lower city platforms. Overloaded transport vessels groaned under the weight of desperate families. Some ships couldn't even clear the toxic atmosphere, their engines failing as poisonous gases ate through their hulls. Explosions lit up the murky water as another evacuation craft went down, taking 200 souls with it. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the outer colonies too," the communications officer announced, her voice breaking. "Cathara 2, Cathara 7. The radiation wave is hitting them faster than predicted. They have maybe weeks, not months." The weight of 6 billion lives pressed down on Tavel's shoulders. As the Republic's chief diplomat, he had negotiated trade deals with dozens of galactic civilizations. Surely someone would help them now, in their darkest hour. "Open all communication channels," he commanded. "Emergency frequencies, diplomatic, networks, even the pirate bands. Send our plea to everyone." The massive hyperspace transmitter hummed to life, its crystalline core pulsing with desperate energy. The message burst out across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carrying with it the hopes of an entire species. "People of the galaxy," Tavel spoke into the recorder, his voice steady despite his terror. "This is Ambassador Tavel of the Catharan Republic. Our homeworld faces total extinction. Our sun burns with deadly fire, turning our life-giving oceans into poison. We have 4 months before our last city falls. We offer everything we have, our bioengineering secrets, our cultural treasures, our eternal friendship, to any who can help evacuate our people. Please, we do not wish to die alone in the dark." The first response came within hours. The Draknari Empire's war fleet was impressive, their massive dreadnoughts capable of carrying millions, but their reply was cold and brief. "Regret cannot assist. Current military operations against rebel systems require all available resources. Suggest seeking aid elsewhere." Next came the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. Their merchant princes were known across the galaxy for their vast cargo fleets. Surely they would see the profit in Catharan biotechnology. But after 3 days of calculations, their answer was brutally honest. Economic analysis complete. Evacuation costs exceed projected returns by factor of 12. Cannot justify expense to shareholders. The ancient ethereal collective took a full week to respond. Their message came wrapped in flowery philosophy. "We sense your pain across the cosmic void. Know that your species' essence will join the eternal consciousness when physical forms fade. Take comfort in this truth. No ships, no aid, just empty words." One by one, the great civilizations of the galaxy found excuses. The silicon mines were upgrading their processing cores. The hive clusters were dealing with internal political disputes. The crystal beings claimed their ships couldn't operate in liquid environments. As each rejection arrived, Tavel felt hope slip away like water through his fingers. The evacuation fleet was already overwhelmed, managing to save only a few thousand per day, while millions more needed rescue. At this rate, less than 1% of his people would survive. On the 7th day, as he prepared to send a final, desperate message to the galactic core worlds, an unexpected signal arrived. The transmission was crude, barely maintaining coherence across interstellar distances. The species identification was completely unknown. "Received your message," came a simple voice, speaking accented galactic standard. "Help is coming. Estimate arrival in 47 hours. Prepare landing coordinates. For refugee processing. This is Captain J-Ho Lee of the Earth Alliance vessel New Hope. We're bringing friends." Tavel stared at the message display in confusion. Earth Alliance? He had never heard of this species or their government. His diplomatic database contained no records of any humans or Earth. Who were these mysterious aliens willing to help? When the galaxy's greatest powers had turned away, outside the dome another section of the reef city went dark forever. Captain J-Ho Lee gripped the armrest of his command chair as the New Hope shuddered through another hyperspace jump. The bridge lights flickered, and sparks flew from an overloaded console. His chief engineer, Hyunwoo Park, was already crawling under the damaged panel with a welding torch. "Sorry, Captain. She's giving us everything she's got," Hyunwoo called out, his voice muffled by the access hatch. These old fusion drives weren't meant for this kind of speed. Through the main view screen, the swirling colors of hyperspace gave way to normal stars as they dropped back into real space. There it was, Cathara Prime, a beautiful blue-green, marble hanging in the void. But even from 3 million kilometers away, Lee could see something was wrong. The planet's atmosphere flickered with unnatural orange flashes, and its normally brilliant oceans looked sickly and dim. "Sensor sweep complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Nari Kim from her station. "I'm detecting massive electromagnetic storms across the planet's surface. The star's radiation output is off the charts, and, sir, I'm reading organic matter decay on a planetary scale." Lee nodded grimly. The reports hadn't exaggerated. An entire world was dying, and they were probably looking at the biggest rescue operation in galactic history. He turned to his communications officer. "Any word from the other powers? The Draknari? The Zephyrians?" "All negative responses, sir. The Draknari say they're too busy with their border wars. The Zephyrian merchants ran the numbers and decided it wasn't profitable. Even the crystal beings claimed their ships couldn't handle liquid environments. Cowards," muttered Navigator Su Jin Yang from her post. 6 billion people about to die, and they're worried about profit margins. Lee opened a channel to the Catharan homeworld. Static filled the bridge as he fought to maintain a clear signal through the radiation storms. "This is Captain Lee of the human fleet. We're 3 million kilometers out and closing fast. Prepare your people for evacuation operations." The response came quickly, and Lee could hear the desperation in the alien voice. "Captain Lee, this is Ambassador Tavel. Please understand. We have over 6 million souls in immediate danger. Our evacuation ships can barely handle thousands per day. The scale of this operation—" "We understand perfectly," Lee interrupted. "We brought everything we could spare." On Cathara Prime, Ambassador Tavel watched his tactical display in growing confusion as the human fleet came into sensor range. What he saw defied all logic. The ships were tiny compared to the massive dreadnoughts of the Draknari Empire or the kilometer-long cargo haulers of the Zephyrian merchants. Most looked like they'd been patched together with spare parts and prayers. The lead vessel, this New Hope, was barely 200 meters long. Its hull showed obvious repair work, different-colored metal patches welded over old battle scars and micrometeorite impacts. The fusion drives glowed with unstable energy that made Tavel's sensors cringe. But as more ships dropped out of hyperspace, Tavel's confusion turned to amazement. They kept coming, sleek passenger liners with their luxury fittings stripped out and replaced with emergency life support pods, massive cargo freighters with their holds converted into refugee compartments, even what looked like converted military destroyers, their weapon mounts replaced with rescue equipment. "By the deep currents," whispered Chief Scientist Velnara. "How many ships do they have?" "I count 52 vessels," reported the sensor operator. "Captain, some of these don't even match each other's design patterns. It's like they gathered ships from a dozen different fleets." That's exactly what they had done. When Captain Lee received the Catharan distress call, he had immediately contacted every human colony, every independent trader, every military commander he could reach. The response had been immediate and overwhelming. Captain Min-Ho Choi of the cargo hauler Rising Sun had been transporting grain to the outer colonies when the call came. He dumped his entire cargo at the nearest station and retrofitted his holds with emergency shelters. Captain Soo-Jung Kim of the passenger liner, Horizon Star, had evacuated her paying customers at the next port and filled her ship with medical supplies instead. Even civilian volunteers had joined the fleet. The mining vessel, Deep Prospector, might not look like much, but her captain Dongmin Park had spent his life savings converting her rock processors into water purification systems for the Catharan refugees. As the human fleet took up positions around Cathara Prime, Ambassador Tavel found himself speaking to Captain Lee again. "Your ship, they're not military vessels, are they?" Lee's chuckle came through the static. "About half of them, yeah. The rest are cargo haulers, passenger ships, even a few converted mining platforms. We grabbed everything that could fly and hold people. But the cost, the resources, why would your people sacrifice so much for strangers?" There was a long pause before Lee answered. "Ambassador, we've been where you are. Earth's history is full of disasters, wars, famines. We learned something important. When people are dying, you don't ask for a profit margin, you just help." As if to prove his point, the human ships began moving into rescue formation with a coordination that amazed the Catharan observers. Despite their mismatched designs and obvious age, they moved like a single organism, each captain knowing exactly where they needed to be. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant by leaving no one behind. The emergency workshop aboard, the cargo hauler Rising Sun, buzzed with frantic activity. Engineer Dongmin Park wiped sweat from his forehead as he crouched inside a half-built aquatic life support pod, his welding torch throwing sparks across the cramped space. Beside him, a Catharan scientist named Kolveth floated in a portable water tank, her gills fluttering nervously as she watched the human work. "The water temperature needs to stay exactly 22 degrees, Kolveth explained, her translated voice crackling through the intercom. "Any higher and our respiratory systems will shut down, any lower and we'll go into shock." Dongmin grunted as he welded another cooling line into place. "Don't worry, I've been fixing life support systems for 15 years, lost a few fingers to the job, but never lost a passenger." He held up his left hand, showing where his pinky and ring finger ended at the first knuckle. "Mining accident on Titan, but that's another story." Around them, dozens of other human engineers worked frantically to convert cargo holds into refugee compartments. The ship's original purpose, hauling grain between colonies, had been abandoned the moment Captain Min-Ho Choi received the distress call. Now every available space was being transformed into emergency shelters for the Catharan evacuees. "Park, we've got a problem with Pod 17, called out Chief Engineer Hyun-Soo Lim from across the workshop. "The water recycling system keeps backing up." "On it," Dongmin replied, grabbing his toolkit. As he crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel, he could hear Kolveth swimming alongside him in her mobile tank. "You know, most species would have given up by now," she said quietly. "Your ships are old, your equipment barely functional. Why are you risking everything for us?" Dongmin paused in his work, considering the question. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the old days on Earth. Floods, earthquakes, wars. He said the one thing that kept humanity going was knowing that when things got bad, someone would always come to help. Guess it's just who we are." 3 decks above, navigator Sujin Yang was having her own crisis. Her communication console was overloaded with incoming messages from human colonies across the galaxy, each one trying to figure out how to accommodate thousands of aquatic refugees they'd never planned for. "Colony 7 is reporting they can handle 50,000 if we can get them portable water habitats," she announced to the bridge crew. "The orbital stations around Mars are offering their hydroponics bays, another 100,000 capacity." Captain Min-Ho Choi nodded as he studied the holographic display showing evacuation progress. "What about the outer rim colonies?" "New Sol Station is retrofitting their docking bays. They think they can take 30,000. The mining platform at Kepler 442 is offering their water processing facilities." Sujin's voice grew more excited as more responses came in. "Captain, I'm getting offers from colonies I didn't even know existed. Even the research stations are volunteering space. But the real heroes were the shuttle pilots diving through Cathara Prime's increasingly toxic atmosphere. The planet's protective, Energy barriers were failing one by one, allowing the poisonous radiation to penetrate deeper into the ocean cities. What had once been crystal-clear water was now a murky yellow-green soup that burned through metal and flesh alike. Pilot Jae-sung. Kim gripped his shuttle's controls as he dove toward the drowning city of Kelvoran. His instruments screamed warnings about atmospheric toxicity and radiation levels, but he ignored them. Through his view screen he could see Catharan families trapped on the upper levels of collapsing coral buildings, their children pressed against the windows in terror. "This is Rescue 7, beginning extraction from Sector 12, he reported over the comm. "Radiation's getting pretty nasty down here, but the shields are holding." His shuttle shuddered as another wave of toxic rain hammered the hull. The acid was already eating through the outer paint, leaving bare metal exposed. But Jae-sung pressed on, using his ship's mechanical arms to punch through the building's wall and create an emergency airlock. "Come on, families first," he called, out as the Catharan refugees swam desperately toward his shuttle. The first group consisted of a mother and her 3 young children, their normally bright blue skin now pale with fear. As they entered the shuttle's emergency water compartment, the mother grabbed Jae-sung's hand with her webbed fingers. "Thank you," she whispered in broken galactic standard. "Thank you for not leaving us." But the evacuation wasn't happening without interference. The Void Syndicate, a collection of pirates and criminals who preyed on galactic shipping, saw the refugee convoys as easy targets. Their sleek black ships had been shadowing the human fleet for days, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came when the converted passenger liner Horizon Star was transferring refugees from 3 different rescue shuttles. Captain Soo-jung Kim was focused on coordinating the delicate docking procedures when her tactical officer shouted a warning. 3 Syndicate raiders dropping out of hyperspace, bearing 27 Mark IV. They're targeting the refugee compartments. The pirate ships opened fire immediately, their plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly energy. But they had made a crucial mistake. They assumed the human Mercy ships would be defenseless. The Horizon Star's hidden weapon ports snapped open, revealing military-grade pulse cannons that had been disguised as communication arrays. Return. Fire lanced out, catching the lead pirate ship completely by surprise. Its shields collapsed under the unexpected assault, and the ship spun away trailing atmosphere and debris. "This is Commander Minho Choi to all pirate vessels," came a cold voice over the battle frequency. "You have exactly 10 seconds to withdraw, before we demonstrate why human Mercy ships carry the biggest guns in the fleet." The remaining pirates, suddenly realizing they had attacked a converted military vessel, fled back into hyperspace without another shot. As the last pirate ship disappeared, Commander Choi's voice echoed across the refugee convoy. "No one touches the evacuees. Not while humans draw breath." The rescue operation continued, and the galaxy began to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their absolute refusal to abandon anyone in need. General Kraktor, of the Draknari Empire, stood on the bridge of his flagship Iron Talon, watching the human rescue operation through long-range sensors. His reptilian features were twisted in confusion as he observed something that went against everything he understood about military organization. "These humans make no sense," he growled to his tactical officer. "Look at their formation patterns, no central command structure, no rigid hierarchy. That cargo captain just changed course without asking permission from anyone." On the holographic display, they could see Captain Dongwoo Han's freighter Steady Progress, suddenly breaking formation to rescue a group of Catharan refugees whose transport had broken down in a radiation storm. The human captain didn't wait for orders or approval. He just acted. "Sir, our military analysts have been studying their coordination patterns," reported the tactical officer, his scales shifting nervously. "Each ship captain seems to operate independently, yet somehow they never interfere with each other's missions. It's like they can read each other's minds." Kraktor's yellow eyes narrowed as he watched the human fleet work. In Draknari military doctrine, such chaos would lead to disaster. Every movement required approval from higher command. Every decision needed to flow through proper channels. Yet these humans were conducting the largest rescue operation in galactic history with what looked like complete disorder. They fight like their lives depend on every refugee, he muttered, watching as human shuttles dove through deadly storms to extract trapped families. Our pilots would never take such risks for aliens. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, in the Zephyrian Trade Consortium's central headquarters, a very different conversation was taking place. Prime Merchant Zek-Saran floated in his crystalline suspension chamber, his tentacles dancing across holographic profit calculations. "The humans are bankrupting themselves for this rescue," observed his financial advisor. "3 colonial governments have declared emergency spending. Their merchant marine is operating at a complete loss." Zek-Saran's compound eyes glittered with interest. "And yet, look at the galactic response. Orders are flooding in from smaller civilizations wanting to establish trade relationships with humanity. The Altarian Federation just signed an exclusive mining contract with Earth Colony 12. The Kepler systems are offering military protection agreements." The advisor's tentacles curled in confusion. "But why? The humans have shown they're willing to waste resources on unprofitable ventures." "Exactly," Zek-Saran replied with what passed for a smile among his species. "They've proven they honor their commitments, even when it costs them everything. Do you know how rare that is in galactic commerce? Every species now knows that if they make a deal with humans, it will be kept. That reputation is worth more than all the cargo ships in our fleet." On the merchant screens, they watched as human vessels continued their relentless evacuation efforts. Ships that should have turned back hours ago due to engine failures and hull breaches kept pushing forward. Crews that hadn't slept in 3 days continued working with grim determination. The ancient ethereal collective, beings of pure energy, who had transcended physical form eons ago, observed the rescue from their dimension beyond normal space. Elder Quintessence, one of the oldest consciousnesses in the galaxy, materialized his energy form to address the collective's council. "The young species continues to surprise us," his voice echoed across dimensions. "We offered them philosophical comfort when they faced their own planetary disasters. Most species would have learned our lesson, that material concerns are temporary, consciousness is eternal. Yet they reject this wisdom," observed another elder. "They cling to physical existence, fight desperately to preserve individual lives that will fade anyway." Quintessence's energy form pulsed with something resembling amusement. "Watch them more closely. See how they interact with the Ketharan refugees." The ethereals focused their attention on a human transport ship where Captain Youngsu Nam was helping Ketharan families settle into their temporary shelters. A elderly Ketharan patriarch, his fins trembling with gratitude, pressed a container of rare biocrystals into the human captain's hands. "Please take this. It's all we have left of our homeworld, our family's most precious treasure. It should cover the fuel costs for saving us." Youngsu gently pushed the container back. "Keep it. Your family needs those memories more than we need payment. Just help someone else when you can, okay?" The ethereal elders fell silent at this exchange. In their billions of years of existence, they had rarely seen such selfless behavior from a species with such short lifespans. "Perhaps," Quintessence mused, "there is wisdom in caring about temporary things. Perhaps the urgency of mortality makes their compassion more pure than our eternal detachment." On a dozen worlds, alien news networks were broadcasting continuous coverage of the human rescue operation. The footage was incredible. Human shuttles racing through toxic storms, cargo ships held together with emergency patches still pushing forward, crews working until they collapsed from exhaustion, only to wake up and continue working. The Crystalline Confederacy, whose silicon-based minds processed information at incredible speeds, calculated that the human operation had a 73% chance of complete failure based on their equipment and resources. Yet somehow, against all mathematical probability, it was succeeding. President Silicon of the Confederacy watched the broadcasts with growing amazement. Their success rate defies all logical analysis. How are they accomplishing what our computers say is impossible? His advisor's crystalline form chimed with harmonic frequencies that indicated deep thought. "Perhaps, sir, there are variables our calculations don't account for. This concept they call determination doesn't translate well into our mathematical models. As the evacuation entered its final desperate hours, Cathara Prime's last cities were disappearing beneath waves of poisonous water. The planet's death throes were visible from space as massive storms of toxic gas erupted from the dying oceans. Yet still the human ships kept coming, their pilots pushing damaged vessels beyond all safety limits to rescue the final survivors. The galaxy watched, in stunned silence, as a species barely 2 centuries into space travel accomplished what the ancient powers had declared impossible. And slowly, a new understanding began to dawn among the established civilizations. They weren't just witnessing a rescue operation, they were watching the birth of a new kind of galactic leadership, one built not on superior technology or ancient wisdom, but on the simple refusal to let anyone die alone. The final evacuation shuttle, Last Hope, shook violently as pilot Jun-Ho Shin pushed the engines beyond their safety limits. Through his cracked viewscreen, he could see Cathara Prime's atmosphere turning a deadly orange as the dying star's radiation finally overwhelmed the planet's protective barriers. Behind him, the last 73 Catharan survivors huddled in their emergency water tanks, too exhausted from terror to even speak. "Come on, baby. Just a little more," Jun-Ho whispered to his battered shuttle as warning alarms screamed from every console. The hull temperature was climbing past critical levels, and his port engine was throwing sparks, but he could see the human fleet waiting in orbit above. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The shuttle cleared the atmosphere just as massive explosions began tearing through Cathara Prime's ocean floor. The planet that had been home to 6 billion souls was now nothing but a toxic wasteland. Its once beautiful blue oceans turned into bubbling pools of poison. Captain J-Ho Lee watched from the bridge of the New Hope as the last shuttle docked with the medical frigate Healing Hand. Around him, his exhausted crew slumped at their stations, some having worked for 72 hours straight without sleep. Lieutenant Nari Kim's hands were still shaking from the stimulants she'd been taking to stay awake during the final evacuation. "Phase. Status report, Lieutenant Kim," Lee said quietly, his own voice hoarse from days of constant communication with the rescue fleet. Nari consulted her datapad with tired eyes. "All evacuees successfully relocated, sir. Final count is 6.2 million Catharans saved. The orbital habitats around New Sol are already processing the first wave of refugees. Colony 7 reports their new aquatic districts are operational. Even the mining platforms have converted their water processing bays into temporary homes." She paused, then added with a weary smile, "The Catharans are already sharing their biotechnology with our colonies as promised. The medical advances alone will save millions of human lives in the coming years." What Lee didn't mention to his crew was the devastating cost of their success. 3 colonial governments had declared bankruptcy funding the operation. The human merchant marine had been stripped to the bone, nearly every cargo ship, passenger, liner and transport vessel in human space had been pressed into service. Earth's military reserves were depleted, having provided escort ships and supplies for the massive rescue fleet. But as Lee watched the last refugee ships heading toward their new homes, he felt something he hadn't expected: pride. Not just in his crew or his species, but in what they had proven was possible when people cared more about lives than profit margins. His communication console chimed with an incoming message, then another, and another. Within minutes, requests were flooding in from across the galaxy. "Captain, we're receiving formal diplomatic contact requests from over 40 civilizations," Nari reported, her exhaustion forgotten as she read the messages. "The Altarian Federation wants to establish a mutual defense pact. The Kepler Mining Consortium is offering exclusive trading rights. Even the isolationist Quantum Collective is requesting cultural exchange programs." The pattern became clear over the following weeks as Admiral Lee, promoted for his leadership during the crisis, reviewed intelligence reports from across known space. Smaller civilizations that had been ignored or exploited by the galactic powers were reaching out to humanity with unprecedented offers of friendship and cooperation. The tentacled philosophers of Rigel VII, who had been enslaved by the Draknari Empire for 3 centuries, sent a secret message requesting human assistance in their independence movement. The crystal singers of the Andromeda Relay, whose beautiful music had been commercialized and sold by Zephyrian merchants without compensation, offered to share their artistic techniques exclusively with human colonies. Even more surprising were the responses from the major powers themselves. General Kraktor of the Draknari Empire requested a personal meeting with Admiral Lee, claiming he wanted to understand how humans achieved such coordination without proper military hierarchy. The meeting took place on the neutral space station, Deep Unity, where the massive reptilian general looked almost comical trying to fit into chairs designed for smaller species. "Your tactical methods make no sense," Kraktor admitted, his yellow eyes studying Lee intently. "No central command, no rigid structure. Yet you completed an operation our best strategists said was impossible. How?" Lee leaned back in his chair, thinking of the exhausted shuttle pilots and cargo captains who had risked everything for strangers. "General, maybe that's exactly why it worked. When you trust people to do the right thing, they usually surprise you." The Zephyrian merchants were more direct in their approach. Prime Merchant Zexaran arrived at Earth's orbital headquarters with a trade proposal that would have made humanity incredibly wealthy. But he was unprepared for Admiral Lee's response. "We're not interested in exclusive deals that shut out other species," Lee explained. "The Catharans taught us something important. When you share freely, everyone benefits more than when you hoard resources." 6 months after the evacuation, Admiral Lee was reviewing reports in his new office at Galactic Humanitarian Command, an organization that hadn't existed before the Catharan crisis, but now coordinated aid efforts across dozens of star systems. His assistant, Commander Mi Young Song, entered with a smile on her face. "Admiral, you need to see this transmission. It's from the Ethereal Collective." Lee raised an eyebrow. The ancient energy beings had offered nothing but philosophical comfort during the Catharan crisis. Their message appeared on his holographic display, the swirling patterns of pure consciousness forming words in perfect galactic standard. "Greetings, Admiral Lee. The collective has observed humanity's actions with great interest. We begin to understand that our detachment from physical concerns may have blinded us to important truths. We request a meeting to discuss mutual cooperation in humanitarian efforts. Perhaps ancient wisdom and young compassion can achieve more together than either can alone." Lee couldn't help but smile. The galaxy's most powerful beings, who had transcended physical form billions of years ago, were asking humans, barely 2 centuries into space, for advice on helping others. As he prepared his response, reports came in of human aid ships responding to a famine on Zerion Prime, a mining accident in the Vega system, and a plague outbreak near the galactic rim. Each crisis saw the same pattern: human ships arriving first, working with whatever they had, refusing to abandon anyone in need. The great powers had built their civilizations on strength, wealth, and ancient knowledge. But humanity was showing the galaxy that true power came from something much simpler: the willingness to help others, even when it cost everything you had. The age of humanity had begun, not through conquest or technological superiority, but through an old-fashioned concept that the advanced civilizations had forgotten: basic human decency. The end.